Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Okay, so you've been studying this issue for a lot of years. You were intimately involved with it in the Obama White House. If President Trump were to call you and ask you, now I don't think this is going to happen, but just if he were to call you, maybe he's watching right now, what would your advice be going into this meeting with Kim Jong-un?
Well, the concern I have is, look, this is not a real estate deal or a reality show. When you're in a negotiation with something as complex as a North Korean nuclear program and a situation that is volatile as the Korean Peninsula, you need diplomats. So advice one is, don't hollow out the State Department. They have no ambassador to Seoul. The person who was in charge of North Korea negotiations just left the State Department. So one, get the professionals in the room to put together a strategy. Second, you need to value science. Another thing that this administration has not valued. When we did the Iran negotiations, we had a nuclear physicist, Ernie Moniz, in the negotiation. If you're dealing with the complexity of how to put constraints on a nuclear program, you need those experts. So there needs to be a team of diplomats, of scientists, of sanctions experts who are all supporting this negotiation. It cannot just be a mano-a-mano show with Kim Jong-un. That's not going to yield results.
Well, it sounds like he's not going to have all of that in place if this is going to happen by May.
Well, I don't. Better to get it right, you know. So right now,
so would you say delay this until he's got a team together to really
get a team together, get a strategy in place, know what you're trying to accomplish? I mean, denuclearization is the maximalist objective, and the notion that North Korea is going to agree to give up all of their nuclear weapons, all their missile capabilities in one meeting, I don't think anybody who looks at this believes that that's the case. So better to take the time to get this right. Again, I welcome diplomacy, but diplomacy has to be done right, because if it's not, if you put all your chips on one meeting, the risk of conflict actually goes up.
Was there ever an offer that came in from North Korea, either from Kim Jong-un or from his father, who was there during the first Obama term, to meet with President Obama?
No, there were offers. The Chinese in particular tried to reinitiate diplomatic processes. I mean, contrary to how our policy is characterized, we pursued a pressure track on North Korea for 8 years. You know, there have been 9 UN Security Council resolutions against North Korea. 7 of those predated the Trump administration. We did tighten sanctions. We had a situation where they had tested a nuclear device in 2006 before we came into office, and we just tightened the pressure for all 8 years. There never was a time when the diplomatic path emerged. I think a couple of things are different, John. One is you have a different leadership in South Korea. You have a left-of-center president in South Korea, whereas we had conservative presidents. It's the South Korean president here who has really taken the initiative to reach out to the North. This. Yeah, and the question is, again, what are Kim Jong-un's intentions? Because what we saw in the first year of the Trump administration was a rapid acceleration of nuclear missile tests. I think they wanted to consolidate their nuclear capability and their missile capability. They have to feel like they're coming into this from some position of strength.
So is that why you think Kim Jong-un has extended this offer?
Yes, I mean, I think he believes he wants to have the legitimacy that is conferred upon him by a meeting with the President of the United States. And that is a very powerful thing.
And if he offers disarmament, if he agrees to it, do you think I mean, can it be trusted? He made this offer. He's made this offer under two different presidents.
Absolutely not. It was Republicans who said trust but verify. And the fact of the matter is an empty commitment to denuclearization. Look, the United States is committed to disarmament under the NPT. Whether that's just a hollow expression of words, that's not success. Success is, can we verify? Are there inspections? Is there a monitoring mechanism to ensure that they're getting rid of their nuclear weapons capabilities and they're getting rid of their missile capabilities? This is a very complicated piece of business, and just words on a paper about that's not what an agreement looks like. If you look at the Iran agreement, it mandates very strict international inspections over the life of that agreement, and some that are permanent to ensure that Iran cannot achieve a nuclear weapons capability. And we need to see the same type of approach to North Korea if we can be assured that we're not just taking Kim Jong-un's word for it.
So you spent probably more time with President Trump than maybe anybody, President Obama, during his 8 years in the White House. Have you talked to him since this? Has he reached out to you?
Yeah.
What's his take on this move?
Well, look, all I'll say is, contrary to, frankly, how we were treated in office, we want a diplomatic track with North Korea to succeed. That's in everybody's interest here. So I think the nation should be rooting for diplomacy to work with North Korea, and I think that's certainly President Obama's view. Again, I think we have a lot of concerns with how they've handled the State Department, how they've handled science, how they've been erratic on this issue with North Korea, how their Secretary of State seemed to be cut out of the process, how, frankly, Japan, one of our closest allies in the world, seemed to be surprised by it. These are my views I'm expressing, John, that I haven't seen them, devaluing diplomacy, devaluing sound decision-making process, devaluing science. These are all the mechanisms you're going to need to make diplomacy with North Korea succeed. And while I want that to happen, I have not seen any evidence that they're equipped for this negotiation.
But President Obama is rooting for President Trump to succeed in this effort.
Yes, and I think all Americans should be. But again, we have to realize that there's nothing more complex than nuclear negotiations. There's no place in the world more volatile than the Korean Peninsula. You cannot just approach this like a reality show. This has to be something where you bring in the experts, you invest in the same type of capabilities in our government that we've seen this administration turn their back on, science and diplomacy.
All right, Ben Rhodes, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, John.
It is Monday, the 12th of March of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. It is River City Hash Mondays. That is our daily special, and you'll need it, because if you lost an hour, I know exactly where it is. Yep, I do. We're saving it. We're saving the daylight. So why was it still dark this morning? Okay, well, somewhere in rural America it makes sense, and even there, they don't like it. So maybe that would be on my platform. If I became poet, philosopher, king for life, maybe we should try that. One of my mandates would be stop changing the damn time. Okay. Well, I'm not poet, philosopher, king, but I am your chef de cuisine here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and what a weekend. All kidding aside, I need to speak about probably a news story that few heard about, and that was the shooting and killing of 3 health professionals at the Veterans Affairs Hospital in Yountville, California, Napa Valley, the largest VA hospital in the nation, by the way. And a former Afghan soldier, a veteran, with severe PTSD, had been going through a program that rented space at the VA hospital, Pathfinders. Well respected, doing, I don't think it's hyperbole to say they were doing God's work. And this fellow had extreme dissonance, and this fantastic, successful program was not able to reach him. That his PTSD, that what he experienced in Afghanistan was so profound that somehow this guy is able to get a gun. And the NRA is suing states and people for stepping in the way trying to prevent a fellow like this from getting a gun. But I just have to say, the tragic story is the 3 women who died, who were there just trying to talk him down. And he did kill himself, of course, too. So I suppose, the good guys with the guns, and I think there were a few Marines there that are armed. Yeah. Didn't help. So, well, there were some police officers actually exchanged gunfire with him. But, he wasn't there to be stopped by cops. Let's put it that way. So apparently a couple of weeks ago he had been dismissed from the program because, from what I've been hearing and some reportage in the local area, is that he was just violent. And I got to tell you, the people that knew the guy before, they took a clean-cut kid and made a killer out of him. That's what they did. Is that he was a clean-cut kid. Very soft-spoken. So, extremely sad. Another one of these deals where he lost his father and mother over, from death. And didn't have enough people to be able to talk to, apparently. Plus, there is an adage, and I've attempted to write about it in some of my fiction. And that is, if your soul is still developing, it's unformed, your moral core, the worst place, the worst construct in which to develop that moral core is in war, in battle. That's the worst place. And I don't know. Not enough people are able to talk a guy and gals down from that that construct. Well, what are we going to attend to today? Oh, let me say about Betsy DeVos. What an idiot. Boy, I got to tell you, having a bunch of money certainly doesn't give you, intelligence. Jeez. Or having a lot of money and just buying your way through life doesn't help you achieve a moral core either. You have a moral core, but not one that's conducive to, community. Jeez. All right. Well, they just want the money. What they have isn't enough. They got to have it all. And when they get that, that's not going to be enough either. All right, Betsy DeVos, what a train wreck. And that's not all that's been going on in the world. Weekends are so tough. I mean, Mondays we have River City Hash. We just basically throw everything in the pan, chop it up, saute it, flip it, stir it around. And it's still not enough. Still can't get to it all, but we try. Well, on the rest of the menu today, in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays, Trump CIA Director Mike Pompeo will not deny having evidence of collusion between Trump and Russia. Won't deny it. All he had to say was no. Oh, yes. Well, I always thought Putin was a white Russian at heart. And it's true, because now he's blaming Jews with Russian citizenship for the 2016 election hack. Yeah, must have been Jews. Must have been the Jews. Gary Cohen is a globalist, which is that really means money-grubbing Jew to the Teutonic side of existence. And Putin being a white Russian at heart, it's the Jews' fault. Always the Jews. And far-right French leader Marine Le Pen thinks changing the name of the Front National, or we call it the National Front. Well, if she changes the name of the National Front, she thinks it's going to hide her racist xenophobia and get her more votes. We'll see about that. Then after the break, we'll move to the chef's table for some weather from around the world and a brief history of attempted Russian assassinations by poison. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Go to the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. Of course, you'll see the chat room link there to the rightish of the page. And as you know, if you listened to the show before, and if you haven't, well, you ought to know that our roaring girl, Kelly Lincoln, does monitor that rather diligently throughout the day. So that's a good way to get a hold of us. Another way is to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, and you can do that by following Netroots Radio at Netroots Radio. We make it easy for you. And if you want to follow me, you can find me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. It's just the ease. It's just, well, we do it here. And I also post the show notes and links on my Daily Coast Diary. And you can find my diary there by finding me as Justice Putnam. The ease in which you can do all of it is so, well, easeful for me. Music on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is provided by the fabulous and lovely Frances Livings, and she plays all over Southern California, so if you're down in the Southland, do check her out. And I have links for her music, and she does other things too. You know, she writes essays and poetry and all sorts of manner of, arts. The arts. So you can find her on the links I provide on my Daily Coast Diary as well. So let's get on with the stories that we have here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. River City Hash Mondays. That's right. We don't put any green bell peppers in it, okay? No, we don't. We'll put the orange Danish ones in instead. Yes, we will. There's a lovely purple one, but as soon as you cook it, it just turns green anyway. So why? Why? I've tried everything. Parboiling it, soaking it in a little bit of lemon water, hoping they'll retain the color. No, they turn green as soon as you heat the mothers up. Cost a lot of money, too. And you think you're going to get a purple bell pepper. Well, no, not many people lie as easily as Donald Trump. I don't know. There's a reason that real estate is rated as one of the most corrupt, low type of industries you want to stay away from, even lower than used car salesmen. Jeez. Yes, well, you know what? You got to sell a lot of units of cars to make up with what you can make in a unit of a house these days. Well, not everyone can lie as easily as Trump, and Tommy Christopher from Share Blue Media fills us in on why. Well, Trump's favorite lie is that there is no collusion between his campaign and the Russians to influence the 2016 election, but his own CIA director won't back him up on it. Now, let's be clear. Pompeo is a political appointee. And maybe the deep state is conspiring against him. And they threaten him like the NRA threatens all the rest of America. No, they don't think like that. Well, he went on Fox News Sunday. That's how they do this. If they're not on Twitter, they're on Trump TV. Pretty soon, it'll be all of Sinclair Broadcasting, too. But that's another story for another day. And he was on Fox News Sunday, and that was yesterday. And he noted, or John Roberts, substitute host John Roberts, noted Trump's fondness for that lie, that there's no collusion. Mm-hmm. Roberts asked CIA Director Mike Pompeo, has the CIA uncovered any intelligence that would suggest the Trump campaign did collude with Russia on trying to influence the election? And then Pompeo responded, John, there are multiple investigations taking place. The CIA and the White House have cooperated with those investigations. I don't have anything to add to that discussion. What? The CIA and the White House have cooperated with those investigations. Okay. Now, Tommy Christopher at Share Blue Media speculates, what's remarkable about Pompeo's non-denial is that he offered no explanation. Denying evidence of collusion should not entail revealing classified information. There has actually been evidence of collusion for quite a long time, but Pompeo's response underscores a very disturbing truth for Trump. The Russia probe began as a counterintelligence investigation. As CIA director, Pompeo has access to all kinds of counterintelligence information. Whatever is constraining Pompeo from defending Trump, whether duty to his job or an unwillingness to expose himself by lying, will eventually become a factor for every Trump official. The pressure from the Mueller probe will only continue to mount. If Pompeo won't defend Trump now, who will defend him when push really comes to shove? And I would say who has. Next offering here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. And this is also the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy today. Our offering here is by Stephanie Griffith out of Think Progress. Okay, but Vlad, I think, has exposed really a driving factor in his own persona. One can never really get into the mind of another individual. It's impossible. We can only speculate, and maybe then we shouldn't. But Vlad has exposed something. A deep-seated bigotry, racial animosity, and he certainly knows that he can use it to stoke the fears and animosities of those that he needs to keep himself in power. One of the reasons why, to me this is not surprising that the right wing and Cult 45 Trumpanistas in particular would not find Russia and Vlad to be such a problem. They consider him to be a contemporary, an ally in the war against ethnic minorities. So, of course, according here to this article by Stephanie Griffith, Vladimir Putin has denied repeatedly meddling in the 2016 U.S. election, but now he suggested in a new interview that the massive cyber operation targeting the presidential vote might have been carried out by, quote, Ukrainian, Tatars, or Jews, but with Russian citizenship. Okay. Yeah. The Russian leader pointed the finger at Jews and ethnic minorities in his country during an interview broadcast Friday on NBC television, with Megan, what's her name? Yeah, she's on NBC now. Totally blows it on whatever it is. Is it the Today Show? What is her show? It's some sort of morning show that she does. Totally blowing it. So give her an interview with Vlad. All right. Don't give it to Andrea Mitchell. I mean, she might be on ABC though. No, she comes on NBC. She's on MSNBC all the time. Don't let Andrea Mitchell interview Vlad. No. Give it to Megyn Kelly. Okay, so he frostily dismissed any knowledge with Megyn of the cyber intrusions into the American electoral system, but Putin added he couldn't care less if operatives from his country were in fact found to be responsible for the operation. Okay. The Russian leader's denials echo recurring remarks by Trump, who repeatedly has discounted assertions, even by his own intelligence agencies, that Moscow was behind efforts to harm the election, changes of his Democratic rival. Okay. U.S. spy officials for months have been convinced that Russia was behind clandestine efforts to sway American voters away from Democratic president nominee Hillary Clinton and to her Republican rival Donald Trump. There's a lot of people who say, no, I always hated Hillary. There was no convincing me not to vote for her. Yeah, well, think about it. The Russians have a long-term plan. They usually do these in 70-year increments, okay? So I was always trying to figure out what is this intense, animalistic, lizard brain hatred of Hillary Clinton? And I don't know. Might not have been brainwashing in North Korea that made everybody a potential Manchurian candidate. Oh, gosh. Okay. Well, I've often wondered if, in terms of the prosperity gospel, that maybe one of the reasons I haven't become filthy rich is because it's impossible for me to be brainwashed. That's got to be the reason. I don't know. I want to be cleanly rich. Doesn't everyone? Okay, so last month, the special counsel, Robert Mueller, issued a sweeping indictment in which he laid out details of the elaborate Russia cyber operation. Mueller's indictment identified 13 Russians and a trio of Russian companies for leading a social media interference campaign across the U.S. The exhaustive 37-page charging sheet left little room for doubt that Moscow led the cyber hacking operation, but two apparent doubters remain: Trump, the shock winner of the November 2016 vote, and Vladimir Putin. Espionage experts and Kremlinologists say, however, that the Russian leader would have to have given his approval for a cyber operation as complex and extensive as the one that targeted the 2016 U.S. presidential election. Putin told Megyn Kelly that even if the hackers had Russian nationality, there is no proof that the operation was directed by the Kremlin. So what if they are Russians, he said. They do not represent the interests of the Russian state. Of course, he also had said earlier, I don't care if they did it. It helps the Russian state, doesn't it? And then he says in the same interview, it doesn't help the Russian state. Yes, it does. No, it doesn't. Yes, it does. No, it doesn't. Yep, that's called gaslighting, folks. Right there. Okay, Vlad, we see ya. You're a bigot. And it also, as I mentioned earlier, it corroborates, well, the speculation in this reporter's opinion that the right wing don't mind the Russians taking over as long as they get to kick black and brown people. Okay, finishing up here in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, is an article out of the Agence France Presse, and everybody's a worker bee there. They don't name who pens these stories. So there. But Marine Le Pen thinks that she can hide the xenophobia and racism that defines, well, her party, her family. But she wants to be a dapper fascist. Okay? And her dad, he's just, a little too not dapper. Jean-Marie, her dad, started the Front National, National Front, in 1972. Now, Marine Le Pen wants to change the name because it's just, it's a bad brand. And she has the admiration and the okay from Steve Bannon. They've embraced, and he went there and spoke at for Marine Le Pen. Oh, and I should mention that she has been elected to her third term to lead the party. 49-year-old, and so she wants to change the party's identity, and of course they're anti-immigrant, which comes with the attendant xenophobia, but they're going to be dapper xenophobes. That's how to do it. So we'll see how that works out. Apparently, she was able to oust her dad, Jean-Marie, who gave a very, his normal Holocaust denial, saying that, the death camps were just a mere detail of history. Yeah, a mere detail. And, but that wasn't dapper, and they got to hide that stuff because it's the only way they can get some more votes. And I don't think it's going to work. They keep saying, Steve Bannon says they have history on their side. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what history he's talking about. All right, let's go to our break, and we'll come back and meet up at the chef's table and go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we have curated for you. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, Mother Meets Arrival. The term annihilation has a meaning in particle physics, and it underlies existence as we know it. Transfer to genetics, and such are the stakes in Alex Garland's latest, Annihilation. Living up to the elegant minimalism we saw in his Ex Machina, the setup for the story is simply what looks like a meteor striking a lighthouse in what appears to be the Gulf Coast region. Around this strike, an area develops called the Shimmer, due to photo-optic effects that surround it and into which expeditions go, but do not return. Authorities speculate as to whether expedition members are being killed or going crazy and killing each other, which is certainly an effective setup for the action. As the film opens, cellular biologist Lena's husband, Kane, returns from a military operation where he'd been presumed KIA, remembering nothing before passing out and then being taken into custody on the way to hospital. The film also ends with Lena and Kane in custody in a government medical facility, but only after a bizarre, non-linear story documenting Lena and the team's journey into the Shimmer. It would be easy in a film like this to allow the beautiful and the grotesque, woven into what might be the strangest horrorscape you'll ever see, to supplant character development. But Natalie Portman's Lena, Jennifer Jason Leigh's Dr. Ventress, the expedition leader, and other members of the all-female team have credible backstories, all of which more or less fit into the theme of distortion and destruction of heretofore unsuspected underpinnings of science and life. Annihilation is the eponymous adaptation of the first of Jeff Vandermeer's Southern Reach novel trilogy, so the sense of inconclusion you'll have coming out of this one is probably as it should be. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. Every day, you produce 1 to 2 liters of spit. It kickstarts digestion and helps you swallow, and it helps prevent bacterial infection in your mouth.
But that still seemed like a lot of energy put into something if it's only going to do that small task.
Esther Bullitt, a biophysicist at the Boston University School of Medicine.
And we wondered whether there was something else that it was doing as well, that maybe it had a farther reach than just preventing infections in your mouth.
So she and her team looked farther down the pipes at whether certain proteins in spit might also disrupt the work of bad bugs in the gut. They grew cells taken from the small intestine of a 51-year-old woman, and they also grew a batch of pathogenic E. coli bacteria, the kind that caused travelers' diarrhea. The E. coli have little hair-like extensions on them, called pili, that grab onto the intestinal cells. But fewer of the E. coli were able to successfully attach to the intestinal cells when a particular saliva protein, called histatin 5, was hanging around. You might think of the E. coli like pirate ships trying to dock at a port. What the histatin 5 does is stop the pirate ships, the bad bugs, from using their ropes, the pili, to dock.
Because if you can't bind, then you can't start an infection. So no adhesion, no infection, no disease.
The study is in the Journal of Infectious Diseases. The salivary protein can be chemically synthesized, stored as a powder, and dissolved in water, and presumably the resulting liquid is safe.
You know that your body tolerates it because you swallow 1 to 2 liters of it every day.
No word yet on whether it might someday be available at the drugstore. But the good news is, you're already swallowing some right now. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
If a condemned prisoner suffers from dementia and can't remember the crime he committed, can the state execute him anyway? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. The state of Alabama says yes, it wants to execute Vernon Madison, who has been on death row for 30 years for a killing he committed in 1985. Mr. Madison has suffered at least 2 severe strokes. He is blind and incontinent, and he slurs his speech. And what he says can make no sense. He can recite the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, but then he gets stuck. There's no H. In the cell, he soils himself because, as he explains, no one will let me out to use the bathroom. There is, of course, a toilet in his cell. The reason Madison has been on death row for so long is that his first conviction was thrown out because prosecutors excluded all 7 potential black jurors. The second conviction was thrown out for prosecutorial misconduct. And then on the third trial, the jury voted to sentence him to life in prison, but the judge sentenced him to death anyway, which was at the time, but is no longer, permissible under Alabama law. The Supreme Court precedent says people can't be executed unless they have a rational understanding of the reason the government is killing them. The state of Alabama claims Mr. Madison's functioning is more than adequate enough to give him that understanding. His case will be argued before the Supreme Court in the fall, and then we'll find out if Alabama is right. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. Citizens have vital roles in our government. One important role is to monitor the decisions and actions of government. Citizens monitor government to be informed about what the government is doing in their name. They also monitor government to ensure that it serves the purposes for which it was created. Another important role of citizens is to attempt to influence the decisions and actions of government. It is the right of citizens to try to influence the decisions and actions of government that affect our lives. In a sense, citizenship is an office of government. Some people might say that it is the highest office of government because citizens are the source of government's authority. Like any other office, citizenship carries important responsibilities. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labour.
This is a Radio Labour special report recorded on Monday, March 12th, 2018. I'm Mark Belanger. Trade unionists around the world are becoming increasingly concerned about the impacts of new technologies and business practices which will impact work in the future. Some of these new technologies include artificial intelligence, driverless cars, and computer apps. And then there are emerging business practices such as Uber, which makes underpaid drivers essentially extensions of computer communication systems. Where all of this is heading is the focus of an initiative of the International Labour Organization. The ILO is the UN specialized agency concerned with matters of work in the world. It has established a global commission on the future of work to study the new technologies and practices coming our way and make recommendations for how governments, employers, and unions can react. The Commission recently held its second meeting in Geneva. Guy Ryder reports on the results. Mr. Ryder is the first unionist to lead the organization in its 99-year history.
We spent a lot of time in the Commission dealing, to give you some examples, with the effects of technological innovation, one of the big stories, dealing with skills development, dealing with equality and women's issues, dealing with new development models, and actually also looking at the very broad question of work and society. So I think this is a moment when the Commission really went in further depth into some of the key issues. There are 2 or 3 next steps, and we've got to be pretty quick now because the time frame is short. Firstly, the Commission has decided to convene a number of technical outreach meetings to look at key issues where the Commission considers it needs to deepen its knowledge further, to fill in some of the gaps. And to give you some examples, one is on the implications of big data and artificial intelligence. We're talking a great deal about these factors, but do we really understand as yet what they mean for the world of work? So that's one area. Let me emphasise as well the Commission's intention to think more about the rural economy and the agricultural sector, reflecting the need of the Commission and our Future of Work initiative to cover all areas of the world of work. We're not just looking from the most advanced countries. In addition, we're going to reach out to other international and regional organisations. There are many of them working on the future of work, and it seems sensible and necessary to sort of compare notes about how we're performing. And perhaps the last point is, I think the Commission is well aware that many of our member states, our governments, workers and employers, they want to be informed. They want to know a little bit more about what the Commission is doing, the direction of its work. So we're going to organise as well some contact meetings with our member states to fill that need. The Global Commission will publish its report probably at the beginning of 2019, our centenary year. And let's be clear, the Commission wants a concise, strategic political document with clear action-oriented policy recommendations that will make a difference. That report will be communicated to our member states, but will then be sent to our centenary conference in June of 2019 here in Geneva.
One of the members of the ILO's Commission on the Future of Work is Philip Jennings, the General Secretary of Uni Global Union. Mr. Jennings is concerned about the new technologies coming into play and how they will be implemented.
I am worried because Silicon Valley doesn't seem to understand the necessity for all workers to have dignified wages and working conditions. I'm worried about the new economy actors not understanding that we need to lift all of the boats and not just those of the privileged. I'm worried that the world is losing its compass in terms of the necessity to bring broader social cohesion and for the benefits and for the wealth that is produced to be better shared than they are today. The situation that we have at the moment is not sustainable. It is full of risks. It's creating great insecurities, and this is having great ramifications in terms of people's livelihoods, in terms of people's sense of well-being, and also in terms of the political choices that they make.
And that's it. International labor news you can use. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
Well, thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. And we always begin with a palate cleanser, and that is weather from around the world. And we always begin along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America. It's currently 31 degrees. We are forecast to go to a high of 72. Oh my gosh. And We are under a wind advisory. It will become active later on, early to mid-afternoon. Right now, winds are negligible out of the south-southwest, about 3 miles per hour. They will be shifting to the east-southeast to 10 to 15 miles an hour with gusts of, 35, 40 miles. And then later on tonight, they will shift again to the southwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour with gusts of 30 to 40 miles per hour. And we will also have rain. Lots and lots of rain. And tomorrow we're going to have lots and lots of rain too, with wind advisory continuing through tomorrow until mid-afternoon or later. So no data on air quality at the moment. Pressure it looks like it's rising at 30.01 inches. Visibility is at 9 miles. Humidity is 85%. Now, weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people live around the world. London is 51 and cloudy. Paris is 55 and cloudy. Rome is 55 and mostly cloudy. Kiev is 39 and mostly cloudy. Kabul is 51 and mostly cloudy. Hong Kong is 62 and clear. Tokyo is 48 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 67 with rain. San Francisco, California is 50 degrees and partly cloudy. And New York is 38 degrees Fahrenheit and fair. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people live around the world. Let's dig into this brief history of attempted Russian assassinations by poison. Elias Grohl out of Foreign Policy magazine put this together. With the announcement by British police that a former Russian spy was poisoned by a nerve agent, Sergei Skripal joins the long ranks of those who have run afoul of the Kremlin and subsequently fallen ill or died under what can only be described as suspicious circumstances. Skripal was walking with his daughter when he fell ill, or when they fell ill, collapsed on a park bench, and were promptly rushed to the hospital where they remain in critical condition. On Thursday, British police said that around 21 people had sought treatment as a result of exposure to the unidentified poison, and a police officer who aided the two is in stable condition, conscious, and is talking. This is being treated as a major incident involving attempted murder by administration of a nerve agent. Mark Rowley, Britain's chief of police for counterterrorism and international security, said. A Russian court convicted Skripal of spying on behalf of Britain in 2006, but he was returned to England as part of a spy swap in 2010. Now, I came across an article here, and I didn't get a chance to really dig into it because I wanted to read this one. But Skripal says that Browder is on the list to be assassinated. Now, of course, he's the one who whose lawyer, Magnitsky, in which the Magnitsky Act is named, had been killed. Okay, well, all right. With the announcement by British police that a nerve agent was involved, suspicion immediately fell upon Russian spy services, which have a history of assassinating renegade spies and dissidents, sometimes with poison. And of course, the Kremlin immediately denied any involvement, and no conclusive evidence has emerged tying Russian security services to the attempted Russian assassination. The use of a highly toxic nerve agent, however, is typically only employed by state security services And Russia is not alone in deploying nerve agents against its enemies. Last year, North Korean agents assassinated leader Kim Jong-un's half-brother using the nerve agent VX. And in 1997, Israeli agents attempted to assassinate Hamas leader Khaled Mashal with a lethal dose of fentanyl. Yet the list of Russian men and women targeted for an assassination after falling afoul of the Kremlin includes quite a few felled by poison. The tactic sends a clear message to those thinking of defection or dissent, says Steve Hall, who up until his retirement in 2015 ran Russia operations for the CIA. He said, the message is, we will find you. Meaning, the FSB and everybody else. Far and away, the most famous example of an assassination by poison is Alexander Litvinenko. The dissident Russian spy was killed in 2006 when he ingested polonium-2010, a highly radioactive substance that had been slipped into his tea. One of those convenient polonium poisonings. Litvinenko fled Russia in 2000 and established himself as a prominent critic of President Vladimir Putin and Russia's security services. He authored a book accusing the Russian FSB, the successor to the KGB, of complicity in the 1999 apartment bombings that Putin blamed on Chechen separatists and served as a pretext for renewed military operations there, and acted as Putin's springboard to power. Remember that? The use of polonium to kill Litvinenko served another purpose. It's a terrible way to die, Hall said. It sends a particularly strong message. And for all that, Litvinenko probably was none too surprised. The view inside our agency was that poison is just a weapon like a pistol, Litvinenko told the New York Times 2 years before his assassination. It was not seen that way in the West, but it was viewed as an ordinary tool. Yeah, I don't know. Guns, poisons, neither one. I think they're stupid. Okay, so Vladimir Kara-Murza, the Russian opposition politician, holds a distinction he would probably like to do without. He has survived attempted assassination by poison not once, but twice. The first incident in 2015, when he fell ill at a meeting. And in a space of about 20 minutes, I went from feeling completely normal to having a rapid heart rate, really high blood pressure, sweating and vomiting all over the place, and then I lost consciousness. Doctors said he had been poisoned. I knew straight away what it was because this was the second time in 2 years that it happened, and it began almost identically in the same way. And his doctors have told him he likely won't survive a third attempt, and I think Vlad knows that too. In September of 1978, George Markov was waiting for a bus near London's Waterloo Bridge when a man jabbed him in the leg with an umbrella, one of those convenient umbrella pokings, and the tip was the umbrella was filled with ricin. And, in the history of Russian assassinations by poison, Hall calls ricin the granddaddy of them all. Well, of course. Markov, a dissident Bulgarian writer, defected in 1968, began working in Western broadcasting. He was on his way to work at the offices of the BBC when he was killed by an agent believed to be working on behalf of the Bulgarian Secret Service. And it has long been speculated the assassination was carried out with KGB assistance. In 2002, the Arab fighter and prominent Chechen rebel leader Khattab opened a letter that would be his last. It contained what is believed to have been a lethal dose of sarin or one of its derivatives, planted by Kremlin operatives. Shortly after his death, the FSB announced that Khattab, whose real name is Samir Salah Abdullah, had been killed in a special operation. Well, yeah, of course. In the heat of the 2004 presidential election in Ukraine, then candidate Viktor Yushchenko suddenly fell ill and disappeared from the campaign trail. When he reappeared, his face was disfigured, the result of what his doctors described as a near-fatal dose of dioxin. Yushchenko, a pro-Western candidate, would go on to win the highly contested election that culminated in widespread street protests in support of him, dubbed the Orange Revolution. While responsibility for his poisoning has never been definitively established, conveniently, right? Suspicion immediately fell on Russian and Ukrainian security services. In November 2012, the businessman Alexander Perepelchini went for a run in his posh gated compound in London. After running about 100 feet, he collapsed and died. He had handed over evidence to Swiss investigators, probing allegations of massive fraud by Russian authorities on an investment fund, Hermitage, controlled by the American businessman Bill Browder. While the exact circumstances of his death remain unclear, investigators discovered trace amounts of a rare toxic flower, Gelsemium, in Perepelchini's stomach. All right. Karina Moskalenko was due to return to Moscow in 2008 from Strasbourg to attend a trial examining the murder of one of her best-known clients, the journalist Anna Politkovskaya. I'm sorry, Politkovskaya. My Russian is terrible. Moskalenko delayed her return to Moscow after feeling ill with intense headaches and a strange giddiness. She and her husband soon found liquid metal pellets, likely mercury, under the seat of her car. And this murder is the one that really gets me. Kills me too. Anna Politkovskaya, before she was murdered in the elevator of her apartment in 2006. Anna Politkovskaya was targeted for assassination using poison. She won countless enemies for her coverage of the Russian invasion of Chechnya, was attempting to travel to North Ossetia in 2004 to help negotiate during a school siege in Beslan. She boarded a flight, but promptly fell ill after drinking some tea that she believed contained poison. In a 2004 article for The Guardian, she described the moment she woke up in the hospital to a nurse leaning over her in the hospital. "My dear, they tried to poison you," the nurse whispered. All right, that's just a brief history of assassination attempts just by poison. Because there's also been the convenient 5-story falls from piano moving into a condo that you don't own, and you don't own a piano, but conveniently you fell from that 5-story precipice. Who knew? All right, we've come to the end of our broadcast period for today, but we will be back tomorrow and for Terrytown Chowder Tuesdays as our daily special. That's what we do. But stay tuned to Netroots Radio throughout the day. There's always breaking news, and our live content throughout the day will keep you up to date on that. And we will visit with you tomorrow in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie d'un novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tendre, nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.